Hey everyone, ready to dive deep into the world of the Alto Knights? Released on March 21st, 2025, this film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. On March 21st, 2025, The Alto Knights hit theaters, an explosive biographical crime drama that immediately sparked both critical discussions and audience fervor. Directed by the legendary Barry Levinson, this film weaves a complex tale of power, betrayal, and the raw human ambition that drives some of the most notorious figures in organized crime history. From its gripping performances to its meticulously crafted cinematography, The Alto Knights does more than just depict the lives of its characters. It pulls you into the murky underworld of 1950s New York with a visual and emotional depth that's both haunting and enthralling. It's a film that challenges your understanding of loyalty, rivalry, and the very essence of the pursuit of power. What makes The Alto Knights so extraordinary isn't just its portrayal of two larger-than-life figures, Vito Genovese and Frank Costello, who ruled the Luciano crime family. No, it's the nuanced way in which it explores the tangled, often destructive relationship between these two mob bosses, men who once fought side by side but would eventually become bitter enemies, their rift leaving a permanent mark on the history of organized crime. Deftly directed and deeply character-driven, the film takes you far beyond the crime-riddled streets of New York. It explores the psychological and emotional complexities of these men, showing how their deep-seated desires for power, respect, and dominance shaped their decisions and ultimately tore their world apart. What The Alto Knights does best is provide an immersive experience that doesn't simply recount the factual rise and fall of two mafia giants. It humanizes them, turning historical figures into living, breathing characters that you can't help but empathize with, even as you cringe at their actions. The dual role of Robert De Niro as both Genovese and Costello is an absolute masterstroke in performance. It's a challenge for any actor to bring to life two such distinctly different characters, but De Niro, who's no stranger to mafia roles, delivers with such authenticity and depth that the audience is completely drawn into his portrayal. His ability to differentiate the cold, calculating Genovese from the more charismatic yet equally dangerous Costello is nothing short of captivating. But it's not just the performances that make The Alto Knights a standout. The film's visual storytelling is arresting, with Barry Levinson's direction creating a rich, atmospheric world that feels deeply connected to its time. The 1950s New York setting is more than just a backdrop. It's alive. From the neon lights illuminating the dark, rain-soaked streets to the vintage suits and cars, everything about the film screams authenticity. The lighting, too, plays a pivotal role, casting shadows that symbolize the looming threats that stalk these characters every moment of their lives. The cinematography is deliberate, each frame meticulously composed to reflect the tension between the characters and the constant danger that surrounds them. The way the film uses color, especially the muted tones of the era, creates a sense of confinement and inevitability, suggesting that no matter how powerful these men become, they are always one step away from disaster. The plot of The Alto Knights is as engaging as it is tragic. At the core, it tells the story of the rivalry between Vito Genovese and Frank Costello, two powerful mobsters whose friendship deteriorates over time, splintering not only their relationship but also the very foundation of the mafia they helped build. Both men come from humble beginnings, their ambitions guiding them to the highest echelons of organized crime. But when their visions of power begin to clash, the consequences are deadly. It's impossible to ignore the tension that simmers throughout the film. The story isn't just about who will come out on top, but also about the emotional toll of living a life built on betrayal, violence, and manipulation. The film delves into the personal lives of these men, exploring their relationships with their wives, played by Debra Messing and Catherine Narducci. Bobby, Costello's wife, is a woman caught in the crossfire of her husband's dangerous world, while Anna, Genovese's wife, stands as a quiet but determined figure, struggling to maintain her dignity and stability in a world defined by secrecy and brutality. These women offer an intimate glimpse into the lives of their husbands, shedding light on the human costs of their criminal empires. The tension in the film escalates as their power struggles become more public, drawing in other key figures from the mafia, including the unpredictable mobster Vincent Gigante, played by Cosmo Jarvis. Gigante's involvement is pivotal, as he helps tip the scales in favor of one of the men, but his role in the larger conflict is filled with ambiguity. The way the film plays with these alliances, who's using whom, who's loyal and who's betraying, is one of its most thrilling aspects. No one is above suspicion, and no character is entirely trustworthy. The narrative itself isn't just about who wins the battle for control of the mafia. It's about the psychological toll that this kind of rivalry exacts. As both Genovese and Costello begin to spiral deeper into their own obsessions with power, the consequences of their actions reverberate through every corner of their lives. The film skillfully blends action and emotion, pulling you into the high-stakes world of organized crime, only to reveal the raw, human truths behind the mobster personas. It's an exploration of what happens when people are driven by ambition, loyalty, and fear, how these emotions can distort reality and push even the most powerful men into darkness. And then there's the soundtrack, which deserves its own mention. The score pulses through the film, never overwhelming the action but always heightening the stakes. Jazz notes mix with somber strings, creating a sense of foreboding that permeates every scene. Music in the Alto Nights isn't just an accompaniment to the visuals. It's a reflection of the characters' internal struggles, the quiet moments before the storm, and the growing sense of doom as the inevitable final showdown looms. The music sets the tone, from the early moments of tension to the quieter, more intimate scenes, all the way through to the explosive conclusion. One of the things that sets the Alto Nights apart from other mafia dramas is its exploration of historical context. While mafia films often focus on the violence, the betrayals, and the big confrontations, this one digs deeper into the impact these men had on the landscape of organized crime. It's not just about their personal lives, it's about the wider implications of their actions, how they shifted the power dynamics within the mafia world, and how their rivalry influenced everything that came after. There's a richness to the story, a sense that the film is not just recounting historical events but reflecting on them, offering a meditation on the consequences of unchecked ambition and the cost of a life lived in the shadows. The Alto Nights has become a cultural phenomenon for a number of reasons. First, it taps into the long-standing fascination with mafia stories, a genre that has captivated audiences for decades. But it's not just another entry in the mob movie canon. It's a fresh take on the genre, one that emphasizes character complexity over sheer action. It's a film that encourages viewers to think, to question, and to reflect on the lives of the men who shaped the criminal world. The performances, the direction, and the storytelling all come together to create a film that feels both familiar and entirely new. It offers a rare glimpse into the lives of men who lived by their own rules, only to find that their thirst for power ultimately led them to ruin. When it comes to why viewers should dive deeper into the Alto Nights, it's because this film offers more than just a surface-level exploration of mob life. It's an intimate look at the personal costs of ambition, power, and loyalty, an exploration of how these men, despite their immense power, were just as vulnerable and human as anyone else. The film challenges the traditional depiction of mobsters as larger-than-life villains, instead asking us to look beneath the surface, to see the emotional scars, the fractured relationships, and the toll that their lives took on those around them. In doing so, the Alto Nights presents a new perspective on a genre that's been done time and time again, but never quite like this. It's not just a mafia movie. It's a human story, a tale of two men who fought for control, lost everything in the process, and ultimately paid the price for their unyielding desire for power. It's a cinematic experience that lingers long after the credits roll, a film that makes you think about the cost of ambition, loyalty, and revenge. The Alto Nights is a movie that deserves to be explored in depth, because in its shadows, you'll find the very real, very human story of two men who thought they could control the world, only to be consumed by it. From the moment the Alto Nights begins, it thrusts you into the murky, dangerous world of 1950s New York, where power is the ultimate prize and betrayal is always lurking in the shadows. As the camera sweeps through the smoky streets, past the buzzing neon signs and into the cold underbelly of the mafia world, you know that nothing about this life is simple. Directed by Barry Levinson, the film wastes no time setting the stage for a thrilling, tension-filled ride that pulls you deep into the rivalry between two of the most infamous mob bosses in American history, Vito Genovese and Frank Costello. The film opens with a cold, calculated look at both men, introducing us to their contrasting personalities. Vito Genovese, played with chilling precision by Robert De Niro, is a figure of unyielding ambition. He's quiet, strategic, and carries with him the aura of someone who has already claimed power and is determined to keep it at any cost. His counterpart, Frank Costello, portrayed by De Niro in a remarkable dual performance, is a more charismatic, sociable figure. He's smoother, more charming, and exudes a confidence that seems to suggest he's already in control, without needing to flex too hard. It's clear from the outset that these two men, despite their close partnership, are opposites in many ways, yet both are equally dangerous in their own right. The tension between them is palpable. As they sit together at a table in a smoky back room, discussing business, the film masterfully sets up the cracks in their relationship. While they present a united front to those around them, a sense of competition lingers just beneath the surface. Genovese's ambition is already apparent. He wants more. He wants total control, and while Costello is satisfied with maintaining power through calculated deals and alliances, Genovese sees weakness in his more diplomatic approach. Costello, on the other hand, is quick to dismiss Genovese's desire for more, believing his own wisdom and understanding of the landscape will keep him ahead. But the writing is on the wall. The stage is being set for a monumental power struggle. Early on, we also meet the significant women in their lives. Bobby, Debra Messing, Costello's wife, is introduced as a woman who's both devoted and deeply aware of the dangerous world her husband inhabits. She's no naive bystander. She's a sharp, intuitive woman who sees more than most and understands that the life her husband leads is fraught with peril. Meanwhile, Anna, Catherine Narducci, Vito Genovese's wife, is far less prominent in the early scenes but carries with her a quiet strength. As the story progresses, it becomes clear that both women are not just bystanders. They are pillars in the lives of these men, serving as both anchors and emotional touchstones in a world of betrayal and backstabbing. The tension between Genovese and Costello begins to mount slowly but steadily, and the first pivotal moment comes when Genovese makes a bold move, one that will send shockwaves through the mafia world. As they convene with other members of the Luciano crime family, Genovese pushes for a bigger share of the operations, presenting himself as someone capable of leading the family. His aggressive stance, however, is met with resistance, particularly from Costello, who remains calm but firm in his opposition. Genovese, undeterred, begins to work behind the scenes, gaining allies and making deals that threaten to destabilize the delicate balance of power that Costello has carefully cultivated over the years. At this point, the film begins to shift its focus to the growing cracks within their alliance. The subtle betrayals begin, with Genovese starting to align himself with powerful mobsters who share his vision of a more aggressive, assertive mafia. Costello, sensing that something is amiss, becomes more paranoid, and his suspicions begin to creep in. The film expertly weaves in small, seemingly insignificant moments that foreshadow the storm ahead. A fleeting glance, an offhand remark. These little details, when combined, create a sense of impending doom that looms over every scene. As the stakes grow higher, the tension between the two men escalates to a boiling point. One of the key turning points in the first half occurs when Costello makes a critical misstep. He underestimates Genovese's ambition, assuming that his more subtle approach will always win out. But Genovese, seeing an opening, takes a dangerous step that forces Costello's hand. It's in this moment that the film's pace picks up, shifting into high gear. Costello, ever the strategist, tries to regroup, but the cracks are now too wide to ignore. Genovese's supporters begin to rally behind him, and he seizes every opportunity to undermine Costello's authority. The tension is now so thick that you can feel it in every scene, every exchange of words. The mafia world is watching, and every decision, no matter how small, has massive consequences. As the conflict intensifies, the supporting characters take on greater importance. We meet Vincent Giganti, Cosmo Jarvis, a rising star in the mafia who is caught in the middle of the escalating power struggle. Giganti's motivations are unclear at first. He's ambitious, but his loyalty is uncertain. His presence adds a new layer of suspense to the story, as the audience wonders where his true allegiance lies. Is he with Costello or with Genovese? His moves are unpredictable, and the film expertly plays on this uncertainty, keeping the audience on edge as Giganti's role becomes increasingly significant. The film continues to build towards the inevitable confrontation. Every scene between Genovese and Costello is charged with tension, as the two men dance around each other, never quite acknowledging the full extent of their animosity, but clearly aware of the growing rift between them. In one particularly intense sequence, Costello confronts Genovese in private, their conversation a slow burn of verbal sparring, as each man tries to outmaneuver the other. There's a palpable sense of unease in the air, as if each word could tip the balance of power in either direction. You can feel that neither man fully trusts the other anymore, and the film beautifully captures the fragility of their relationship, highlighting how quickly it can all unravel. At the same time, the stakes are raised in Costello's personal life. Bobby, who has always been a strong presence, starts to show signs of wear and tear. She's caught between her love for her husband and the increasing tension surrounding him. The mafia world is bleeding into their home, and the emotional cost is becoming too much for her to bear. The film doesn't shy away from the toll that the mafia lifestyle takes on those closest to these men, offering a poignant look at the women who are often left in the shadows of their husbands' lives. As Bobby begins to question everything she once believed in, her emotional journey becomes just as crucial to the narrative as the power struggles at the heart of the film. Meanwhile, Genovese's ascent within the mafia continues, and with each passing day, his influence grows. His ambitious moves begin to pay off as he gains the loyalty of key figures, and the rumblings of rebellion within the mafia family reach a fever pitch. The film expertly sets the stage for the final act, where the tension between Genovese and Costello will inevitably come to a head. But before that happens, the first half of the movie is filled with smaller, but equally crucial moments that serve as the foundation for the inevitable explosion of violence and betrayal that is about to follow. The first half of the Alto Nights is a masterclass in building suspense and character development. The audience is drawn into the escalating conflict between Genovese and Costello, each new scene heightening the sense of impending doom. The stakes grow ever higher as the power struggle intensifies, and with every maneuver, every betrayal, the film makes it clear that there can be only one victor. But even as the tension builds, the characters themselves remain deeply human, their flaws and vulnerabilities making them all the more compelling. The first half of the film not only sets the stage for the explosive confrontations to come but also ensures that when the inevitable break occurs, it's not just about power. It's about the lives destroyed, the alliances shattered, and the irreversible consequences of a world built on violence and deceit. As the Alto Nights moves into its second half, the tension that has been building throughout the first act is no longer subtle. It's raw, palpable, and ready to explode. The once strong alliance between Vito Genovese and Frank Costello has crumbled, and what follows is a thrilling roller coaster of political maneuvering, backstabbing, and eventual violence. This is the part of the story where everything that's been hinted at comes to fruition, where betrayals no longer feel like subtle shifts but violent ruptures that will forever alter the lives of everyone involved. The first notable shift comes when Genovese, now fully emboldened by his growing support within the mafia, makes his most audacious move yet. He tries to seize control of the Luciano crime family by orchestrating a coup. Genovese's long-standing ambition has finally culminated in a calculated strike against Costello. He arranges a meeting with the family's most influential figures, all while Costello remains in the dark, believing that he can still control the outcome of his rivalry. There's an air of inevitability about the scene, as if the clash between the two men, which has been building since the very first frame of the film, is finally on the verge of detonating. As Genovese prepares to make his move, we see the extent of his ambition. This is no longer just about leadership. This is about rewriting the rules of the entire mafia family. Costello's downfall begins subtly. He is still in control, still a commanding presence in the room, but the ground beneath him is slipping. The moment of betrayal is poised, and the film delivers it with striking accuracy. Costello begins to feel the walls closing in on him. We see him in moments of reflection, isolated and vulnerable, as he realizes that those closest to him have already chosen sides. The smooth confidence that has marked his every move begins to erode, replaced by a quiet desperation that feels like a last-ditch effort to retain some semblance of power and dignity. As Costello becomes aware of Genovese's growing influence, his attempts to neutralize the threat only make things worse, further isolating him from those who once called him their leader. One of the film's most emotionally charged moments happens when Costello reaches out to Bobby, his wife, for support. In one of the film's quieter yet most potent scenes, the camera lingers on their faces as they talk through the impending collapse of everything Costello has built. Bobby, always the anchor in his chaotic world, is torn between loyalty and a growing sense of fear. Her emotional journey, which has been building throughout the film, comes to a head here. She's caught in a world she never fully signed up for, one that has cost her her peace, her family's safety, and ultimately, her own peace of mind. The conversation is brief but incredibly powerful, a moment of clarity for both Costello and the audience. It's clear that the stakes have shifted. There is no way to win now, only to survive. In the background of this unraveling drama, Vincent Gigante, played by Cosmo Jarvis, continues to emerge as one of the most enigmatic characters in the story. Gigante, whose loyalties have been called into question, begins to move in increasingly unpredictable ways. Initially, Gigante seemed to be a pawn in the battle between Costello and Genovese. But as the film progresses, it becomes apparent that Gigante has his own game to play. His relationships with both mob bosses are fraught with tension, and the audience begins to wonder whether he'll side with the increasingly power-hungry Genovese or remain loyal to Costello, who at this point is a man on the verge of losing everything. Gigante's moments of unpredictability add a layer of suspense to the narrative. His actions are far from predictable, and you can feel the weight of his decisions each time he enters a scene. With Genovese's plans to take control becoming clearer, the film's pacing picks up as the final confrontation begins to take shape. What follows is a series of brutal confrontations that set the stage for the inevitable tragedy that will unfold. One of the most suspenseful moments in the second half occurs when Costello is confronted by Genovese's men, led by none other than Vincent Gigante. The mobsters arrive in a carefully orchestrated attack. Costello is faced with an impossible decision: trust his instincts and fight back, or surrender and try to make peace with the inevitable loss of his power. The scene is tense, drawn out with an unsettling sense of inevitability, as Costello sits helplessly in front of his would-be assassins. Gigante's involvement is key here. His unpredictable actions, seemingly loyal one moment, coldly indifferent the next, create an aura of suspense that has the audience on the edge of their seats. The assassination attempt on Costello is a stunning moment in the film. It's carried out with precision, but it's the aftermath that leaves the audience breathless. Costello somehow survives the attack. The near-fatal shooting does not kill him, but it shatters his sense of invincibility. The violence, the bloodshed, the fractured friendships. It's all part of a plan that, for Genovese, is becoming increasingly clear. A new order is dawning in the mafia world, and it's going to be one where Costello no longer holds any sway. Costello's recovery is marked not by triumph but by the realization that his power is gone. He tries to return to his old ways, his old connections, but those around him have already turned their backs. The dynamic between him and Bobby shifts in this part of the film. She's less supportive than before, more resigned to the fact that their world has changed irreparably. It's in these moments that the true cost of power is revealed. It's not just the toll it takes on the individual, but the destruction it leaves in its wake. Bobby, once a devoted wife, now finds herself trapped in a life she never truly chose, and this emotional arc resonates deeply, especially when juxtaposed with Costello's growing isolation. Meanwhile, Genovese's rise to power is swift. With Costello out of the picture, both physically and politically, he seizes control of the mafia, consolidating power in a way that makes it clear his reign will be absolute. However, the film refuses to let him off the hook so easily. As Genovese solidifies his hold, we see moments of vulnerability creeping into his character. While outwardly a figure of absolute control, the cost of his ambition begins to weigh heavily on him. There's a certain paranoia that takes over, as if he's constantly looking over his shoulder, wondering when the next challenge will arise. The darkness that has always lurked in his character deepens, and the audience begins to question whether he truly believes in the legacy he's building, or if, at some point, his own guilt will catch up with him. In the film's most climactic sequence, a violent confrontation occurs between Genovese's supporters and those still loyal to Costello. The mob world, which had once been ruled by strategic alliances and subtle power plays, is now an arena of outright violence and vengeance. The brutality of this final battle underscores the high stakes of the conflict. No one, not even the most powerful figures, are safe. As the bullets fly and the bodies pile up, the film makes it clear that the cost of ambition is never without consequence. The men who fought so hard to control everything are now left to pick up the pieces of their broken world, their power slipping through their fingers like sand. In the aftermath of the violence, the audience is left with a sense of grim inevitability. Genovese's rise to power has been realized, but at what cost? Costello, once the face of the mafia, is a broken man, haunted by his own choices and the crumbling empire around him. Bobby, still standing by her husband, has witnessed the irreversible transformation of the man she once loved. Gigante's loyalty remains as elusive as ever, and his role in the final outcome is left intentionally ambiguous. The film ends on a note of unresolved tension, as Genovese, now at the height of his power, contemplates what comes next in his dark and lonely ascent to the throne. The second half of the Alto Nights doesn't just close the chapter on the rivalry between Genovese and Costello. It drives home the emotional and psychological toll that this world has taken on everyone involved. The brutality of the mafia's inner workings, the constant fear of betrayal, and the ultimate destruction of relationships leave a lasting impact, reminding the audience of the true cost of ambition, loyalty, and power. It's a masterclass in building emotional weight, crafting unforgettable moments, and tying together the narrative threads with a sense of inevitability that lingers long after the credits roll. In the Alto Nights, the story is not just about the rise and fall of powerful mob figures. It's about the men and women who are caught in the suffocating grip of ambition, betrayal, and violence. At its heart, this film is a deep exploration of the human psyche, of how loyalty and power can shape individuals, and of how these forces collide when people are pushed to their limits. From Vito Genovese's cold ambition to Frank Costello's sharp intellect, the performances breathe life into these complex characters, turning them into unforgettable figures whose arcs stay with you long after the film ends. Vito Genovese, the ruthless ambition. Vito Genovese, played with chilling precision by Robert De Niro, stands as the embodiment of raw ambition. When we first meet him, he's calculating, reserved, and deeply aware of the power that he has yet to fully grasp. His drive is singular, to be the undisputed leader of the Luciano family, and ultimately the mob world at large. From the start, his motivations are clear. He's not just interested in controlling the family's operations. He wants to fundamentally reshape the landscape of organized crime. There's no room for negotiation in his mind. His vision of the future is a brutal one, where loyalty is enforced through fear and strategy, not just old-school alliances and favors. What makes Genovese's character compelling, however, is the complexity behind his cold exterior. De Niro gives a performance that is masterful in its restraint, allowing us to see the gears turning in Genovese's mind even when his face betrays little emotion. He's a man of few words, and when he does speak, it's with an assuredness that makes others listen. But it's the silence between his words that truly defines him. Genovese's transformation throughout the film is subtle but profound. His ambition, which starts as a quiet hunger, grows into a desperate need for control. There's a coldness to him that deepens as the story progresses, particularly when he realizes that Costello's diplomacy, the very thing that once attracted him to their partnership, is now a weakness in the cutthroat world they inhabit. Genovese doesn't just want power, he wants total domination, and his every move serves this singular purpose. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear that Genovese is no longer driven by what he can gain, but by the need to eliminate any threats to his supremacy. This obsessive drive makes him a formidable antagonist. There's no moral compass guiding him, only an insatiable desire to rise. The performances by Niro in this role are haunting and unforgettable. He doesn't just embody a mob boss. He becomes the very essence of ruthless ambition. His eyes, always calculating, hint at the deeper fear that he, like many of the men around him, is constantly looking over his shoulder. In a world where power is everything, Genovese's rise to the top is marked not just by strategic brilliance, but by a willingness to throw away the last shreds of humanity for the sake of dominance. Frank Costello, the intellectual strategist. In contrast to Genovese's fierce ambition, Frank Costello, portrayed by a charismatic yet vulnerable Al Pacino, is the intellectual of the mafia world. His approach to power is one of finesse, of subtle manipulation and calculated moves that often take years to unfold. Where Genovese is blunt and aggressive, Costello is smooth, diplomatic, and charming. A man who doesn't need to shout his authority but lets it be known through quiet dominance. But beneath this smooth exterior is a man with deep insecurities. Someone who knows that the fragile alliances he's built could crumble in an instant. Costello's motivations are less about raw power and more about the preservation of his world. He's a man who has spent his entire life carefully constructing a legacy of control, but one that doesn't require bloodshed at every turn. His business acumen is what sets him apart. He knows when to make alliances, when to step back, and when to pounce on an opportunity. Costello believes in stability. He doesn't want to rattle the foundations of the mafia world too violently, understanding that power is often about control over the subtler aspects of life, whether it's through bribes, favors, or quiet threats. However, this belief in subtlety, in playing the long game, becomes his fatal flaw. The more aggressive, impatient Genovese begins to challenge his authority. Costello's calm demeanor slowly starts to give way to a quiet desperation. He is, at his core, a man who is losing his grip, not just on the family but on his own sense of identity. Al Pacino's performance as Frank Costello is a study in nuance. He delivers a character who, on the surface, seems calm and collected, but underneath, there's a whirlwind of doubts, regrets, and fear. It's in the small moments, when Costello is alone, staring out a window, or when he talks to Bobby, that Pacino's mastery as an actor shines. There's a deep sadness in Costello's eyes, an acknowledgement that he has fought his entire life to control the game, only to see the very foundations of his empire crack under the pressure. As the story unfolds, Costello's journey becomes less about maintaining power and more about survival. A slow, painful acknowledgement that his time has passed, and that the world he built is crumbling. Bobby Costello, the silent strength. Bobby Costello, played by the brilliant Debra, is more than just the wife of a mafia boss. She is the emotional anchor of Frank's world, a woman who, over time, has learned to cope with the violence, deceit, and unpredictability that comes with being married to a man in the mafia. From the start, Bobby is strong, intelligent, perceptive, and deeply aware of the dangers that swirl around her husband. She's not just his confidant. She's his moral compass, the one person who seems to understand the weight of the world that Costello carries on his shoulders. But as the plot unravels, Bobby's strength is tested in ways she never anticipated. Her loyalty to Frank is unwavering, but it's also rooted in a growing understanding that the life they lead is unsustainable. Her arc is perhaps the most emotionally devastating in the film, as she watches her husband's empire crumble and realizes that she's been complicit in the very system that is now destroying them both. There's a quiet power in Bobby's character, one that manifests in her ability to hold the family together when everything is falling apart. But there's also a vulnerability in her, especially as the stakes grow higher. Messing's portrayal of Bobby is a revelation. She's not just the supportive wife. She's a woman in her own right, trying to make sense of a world that is slipping away from her grasp. Vincent Gigante, the unpredictable wild card. Vincent Gigante, played with riveting intensity by Cosmo Jarvis, is the wild card in the Alto Knights. His loyalties are constantly in question, and his actions remain a mystery to both Costello and Genovese. At first glance, he seems like another ambitious young mobster, looking to align himself with one of the big bosses. But as the story progresses, Gigante's true role becomes increasingly ambiguous. He's a character who embodies unpredictability, shifting between loyalty and self-interest with unsettling ease. Gigante's motivations are harder to pin down than those of the main characters, which makes him an especially compelling figure in the story. He's not simply a follower. He's a man who's constantly calculating, trying to find the best path forward, whether it leads him to Costello or Genovese. He's a reflection of the fractured world around him. A man who has learned that nothing in the mafia is as it seems, and that loyalty is often a fleeting thing. Supporting characters and their significance. While Genovese, Costello, and Bobby are the central figures, the Alto Knights thrives on its strong supporting cast, whose roles help elevate the story's complexity. The peripheral characters, men like Joe Bonanno, played by Paul Giamatti, Carlo Gambino, Vincent D'Onofrio, and Tommy Lucchese, Ben Kingsley. Each play significant roles in the mafia drama, highlighting the factionalism and ever-shifting alliances that characterize the criminal world. Bonanno, for example, represents the more traditional old-world mafia mentality. His interactions with Costello and Genovese are a fascinating commentary on the generational shifts in the mafia world. Bonanno's old-school approach to crime and family contrasts sharply with Genovese's ruthless desire for control, and the tension between the two illustrates the larger, inevitable conflict that's taking place in the story. Each supporting character brings their own flavor to the narrative, either acting as a foil to the primary characters or as a catalyst for the inevitable betrayal and violence that shapes the story. The significance of these characters is clear. They represent the ever-present danger of shifting allegiances, the constant paranoia of the mafia world, and the eventual collapse of the old guard in the face of new, more ruthless ambitions. The legacy of the characters. At the heart of the Alto Knights is a meditation on the price of power, what it costs to rise to the top, and how those who seek power are inevitably consumed by it. Every character in the story is shaped by this relentless pursuit of control, and their arcs reflect the human cost of their ambition. What makes this film unforgettable is not just its action and drama, but the emotional resonance of the characters' journeys. It's a world where relationships are as fragile as the alliances that hold them together, and where the characters, no matter how powerful, are never safe from the consequences of their actions. Behind every masterpiece is a web of challenges, fascinating quirks, and moments that test the very limits of a film's creative process. The Alto Knights, 2025, is no exception. The film, an intense journey through the power struggles and personal battles of mafia families, not only captivated audiences with its thrilling narrative, but also gave rise to a series of behind-the-scenes stories that reveal just how much effort and unpredictability went into making this cinematic marvel. From unexpected production hiccups to fascinating creative decisions and surprising moments of on-set chaos, the making of the Alto Knights was as intense as the film itself. The filmmakers of the Alto Knights knew that authenticity was crucial when creating a mafia world that spanned decades. They didn't just rely on CGI or green screens. They went to extraordinary lengths to find the very streets, buildings, and corners of New York that had once been home to the figures the story depicts. The production designer, Anika Howell, spent months combing through old photographs, maps, and city archives to pinpoint locations in New York City that still bore the marks of the 1940s and 1950s. Some of the buildings were already crumbling or out of use, but these were the exact spots the filmmakers were after. One of the film's key moments involved shooting at a street corner that was known to locals as a popular gathering place for chess players who had met there for decades. The crew arrived to find these players unwilling to vacate the location, but instead of fighting them, the filmmakers hired the entire group as extras for the scene. This unexpected turn of events ended up adding an unexpected layer of realism to the film, as the chess players could be seen in the background of one of the most pivotal scenes, further enriching the story's atmosphere. When casting the Alto Knights, the filmmakers knew they had to find actors who could embody the intense, complex figures of the mafia world, but the casting of Robert De Niro and Al Pacino to play Vito Genovese and Frank Costello, respectively, was more than just a casting choice. It was an iconic moment for fans of mafia dramas. Their chemistry, already legendary from their previous collaborations in the Godfather series and Heat, was a centerpiece of the film. However, what most people don't know is that their dynamic on set was far more competitive than anyone could have anticipated. Both actors, notorious for their craft, were determined to make their characters stand out in every scene. The tensions between them fueled their performances, as both De Niro and Pacino insisted on improvising key moments, particularly in the scene where their characters have a tense, face-to-face negotiation. The resulting dialogue was so sharp and natural that it ended up becoming one of the film's most memorable exchanges. Afterward, Pacino and De Niro were seen in deep discussion about their approaches, arguing about their choices, only to eventually share a moment of mutual respect and admiration. The energy between them created a unique dynamic that viewers could feel on screen. One of the most surprising moments of the film's casting came from the role of Vincent Gigante, portrayed by Cosmo Jarvis. Gigante, a figure infamous for his eccentric behavior and unpredictable nature, was a challenge for any actor to bring to life. Jarvis, an unknown actor at the time, was cast in the role despite some skepticism about his ability to balance the complexities of the character. But Jarvis's commitment to method acting went to a degree that was nearly alarming. During production, he would mimic Gigante's erratic behavior, such as wandering around the set without speaking, communicating only through gestures, and taking long solitary walks between shots. At times, this left the crew unsure of whether he was simply acting or had truly lost himself in the character. However, this approach resulted in an unforgettable performance. Jarvis transformed Gigante into a compelling, unpredictable figure. He wasn't just an eccentric mobster, but a deeply unpredictable force, shifting between loyalty and self-interest with alarming speed. The strange intensity he brought to the role became one of the most unforgettable aspects of the film, with many critics praising him for his chilling portrayal. The Alto Knights also faced a major crisis during production. Just days before a major rewrite deadline, the film's original screenwriter, Michael Phillips, disappeared without a trace. While some speculated that the pressure of working on such a high-stakes project had become overwhelming, others claimed that Phillips simply wanted to escape the stressful environment. Regardless of the reasons behind his disappearance, the production team was left scrambling to complete the screenplay. A team of script doctors, led by screenwriter Jane Yamada, was brought in to complete the script, resulting in some significant changes to the film structure. One of the most notable shifts came when Yamada and her team decided to alter the film's central plot point. Originally, Phillips had written the story with a focus on Costello's downfall being a result of betrayal by his closest ally. However, Yamada pushed for a deeper exploration of Costello's internal struggles, his own loss of power and identity. This change shifted the film's emotional center, giving the character of Frank Costello far more depth. It was a bold choice, but one that paid off in a way that many believe contributed to the film's emotional power. While the script was undergoing major rewrites, another unexpected moment occurred during the filming of a brutal street fight sequence between Genovese's and Costello's men. The scene, which required months of rehearsal, was meant to be a carefully orchestrated brawl, but in one of the shots, an actor accidentally knocked out a member of the stunt team during a particularly intense moment. The crew immediately halted filming, and there was a tense moment where the injured stuntman had to be treated on set. It's reported that the actor, despite being momentarily knocked unconscious, refused to take time off, insisting on finishing the scene. However, the real twist came when it was revealed that the stuntman was none other than a seasoned fight coordinator who had been working on the film from the beginning. The accident became a source of both tension and laughter on set, as everyone joked about how the fight coordinator had taken the role of fall guy a bit too literally. Fortunately, the injury was not serious, and the fight sequence was completed successfully, but the entire crew was left with a memorable behind-the-scenes story that would be told for years to come. Despite all of these unexpected moments and the challenges faced during production, the Alto Knights came together as a powerhouse of storytelling, direction, and acting. But what truly stands out about the film's production is the care with which it approached its setting and characters. The filmmakers didn't just want to recreate the past. They wanted to immerse audiences in it, and they succeeded. From finding the perfect, crumbling streets of New York to the unexpected hiring of local chess players, from De Niro and Pacino's tense, competitive energy on set to Jarvis's bizarre immersion into the role of Vincent Gigante, every decision made was about authenticity, intensity, and ensuring that the audience would feel every moment on a visceral level. Through all the chaos, the controversies, and the surprising twists of fate, the Alto Nights emerged as a cinematic triumph. The film's behind-the-scenes journey was as unpredictable and captivating as the story it told, proving that sometimes, the most unexpected moments can lead to the most extraordinary results. When you talk about the Alto Nights, 2025, you're not just discussing a story about mafia families, power struggles, and betrayals. You're talking about a cinematic achievement that pushed boundaries both creatively and technically. The film's production is a testament to the dedication and innovation that went into making it not only a compelling narrative, but also a visually stunning experience. It's a movie where the technical achievements blend seamlessly with the emotional journey, each shot adding weight to the story's themes of power, loyalty, and conflict. Behind the camera, the team worked tirelessly to create a world that feels both lived in and epic, mixing old-school techniques with groundbreaking innovations to craft something that feels fresh and immersive. The first thing you notice when watching the Alto Nights is how deeply the filmmakers commit to authenticity. The decision to shoot on location in real areas of New York that mirrored the 1940s and 1950s not only grounded the film in reality but also provided an added layer of texture. The production team didn't simply rely on replicas of old streets or generic sets. They wanted to make sure that the audience felt like they were walking alongside these mobsters in a world that actually existed. That level of detail, however, didn't come without its hurdles. Locations in New York, especially those that were meant to capture the look of the mid-20th century, are often hard to access. The filmmakers had to scout areas that not only fit the time period but also allowed for intense action sequences, car chases, and tense, intimate confrontations between characters. The production was constantly negotiating permits, working with local officials, and securing permission to use spaces that were, in some cases, abandoned, unkempt, or under renovation. In one particularly challenging sequence, the filmmakers had to clear an entire block, just to allow for the film's climactic chase scene. This wasn't just a matter of logistics, it was about maintaining that perfect balance between historical accuracy and narrative tension. But the results were stunning. The streets felt real, weathered, lived in, which added an unparalleled atmosphere to the film. One of the most notable creative choices was the way the Alto Nights handled its visuals. The cinematography, led by the Oscar-winning DOP Victor Campos, took an unconventional approach. Instead of using the glossy, stylized lighting that often accompanies period dramas, Campos embraced the darkness of the 1940s and 1950s. There's a constant interplay of light and shadow, often with characters half-lit, their faces obscured by darkness, reflecting the secrecy, mystery, and danger of the mafia world. This noir-inspired style gave the film an almost tactile quality, where shadows hung heavy in every frame. Campos used long, lingering takes, letting the audience absorb the quiet tension in a room before an explosion of violence or verbal. But innovation didn't just live in the visuals. It also manifested in the sound design. The sound team, led by the brilliant Laura Huerta, developed a unique approach that paired traditional orchestral score with more unconventional elements. The score, composed by Gabriel Sanz, had the epic scope of a classic mafia film, but it was mixed with ambient sounds from New York itself, traffic, distant voices, the hum of a city that never sleeps. This helped create aural layers that made the world of the Alto Nights feel even more alive. One of the film's most effective moments comes during a tense negotiation between Costello and Genovese, when the music and sound design become almost deafening in their restraint. The silence in the room is so heavy that the slightest noise, a chair scraping, a breath taken, feels monumental. The sound design helps build the tension in these quieter moments, making the eventual bursts of violence feel even more jarring. But no conversation about the film's technical achievements would be complete without mentioning the visual effects. The The film's visual effects team was tasked with making some key moments come to life without ever pulling the audience out of the immersive world. One of the most complex scenes to execute was a massive shootout sequence that was staged at night in the rain. The production team had to create a digital downpour effect that not only looked natural but also added to the sense of danger and chaos that pervades the scene. Rather than relying on green screens, the VFX team created a fully digital rainstorm, then layered it with practical elements to make the scene feel even more visceral. The gunfire flashes, the rain-soaked streets, and the tension in the air all came together thanks to the seamless blend of practical and digital effects. Yet, for all the technical innovation, the Alto Nights remained deeply rooted in the classic filmic traditions. Much of the action in the movie was kept practical, with stunt coordinators working closely with actors to create realistic, visceral fight sequences. The film's climactic final showdown, a confrontation between the rival factions, was staged with careful choreography and a series of carefully timed movements. The stunt team spent weeks preparing the fight, making sure every punch, gunshot, and body slam was timed to perfection. Even the most intense moments of physical violence had a kind of artistry to them, designed not only to shock the audience but also to communicate something deeper about the violence of the mafia world. In one of the most intense sequences, a mid-film confrontation takes place in a confined space, where every inch of the set feels like it could explode at any moment. This scene was a real technical challenge because of the tight quarters in which it was filmed. The filmmakers had to use miniature cameras mounted on dollies to navigate through the cramped space, capturing the intricate choreography of the characters while maintaining an intense, close-up feeling of claustrophobia. The cinematographers used long tracking shots that followed the actors from room to room, creating an almost suffocating sense of tension as the conflict escalated. The pacing of this scene was driven not just by the actors' performances but also by the technical innovation behind the camera, which allowed the scene to unfold in a way that kept the audience on the edge of their seat, never quite knowing when the next violent outburst would occur. Beyond the action and drama, there were moments of unexpected humor that showed the filmmakers' ability to balance the film's darker elements with more humanizing moments. One such example occurred when the filmmakers allowed some of the actors to improvise their lines. The most famous instance came between De Niro and Pacino during an impromptu argument over a trivial issue. What was meant to be a quick, tension-filled confrontation turned into a bit of comedic relief as their characters bickered over a minor detail in a plot to take down a rival. This moment, which was not in the original script, turned into a fan-favorite scene that lightened the mood of the otherwise dark and serious film. The film's attention to detail also extended to its wardrobe. The costume designers worked meticulously to ensure that the characters' clothes reflected their status and personalities, while also adhering to the historical accuracy of the period. One fascinating detail was the custom-made suits worn by De Niro's Genovese, which were designed to make him look powerful, yet unapproachable. Every detail of his clothing, from the cut of his suits to the sheen of his shoes, was intended to reinforce his character's cold, calculating nature. Pacino's Costello, on the other hand, was dressed in slightly more relaxed, yet still elegant, attire that communicated both power and approachability, emphasizing his strategic mind and his ability to charm those around him. The filmmaker's attention to these smaller, seemingly trivial details added another layer of richness to the film's portrayal of the mafia world. As the Alto Nights moved into post-production, another challenge arose: the editing. With so many complex narrative threads, multiple timelines, and a large ensemble cast, the editing team had their work cut out for them. The goal was to craft a coherent narrative while maintaining the pacing and intensity that the story demanded. The film's editor, Alicia Green, worked tirelessly with the director to fine-tune the flow of the story, often having to make tough choices about which scenes to keep and which to cut. In one particularly difficult scene, an entire subplot involving an old ally of Genovese was cut, but the filmmakers made sure that the emotional core of the film remained intact. The final result was a tightly woven narrative that never felt bogged down by unnecessary subplots, but instead stayed focused on its core themes of loyalty, betrayal, and power. Ultimately, the Alto Nights production was an extraordinary balancing act of technical innovation, creative vision, and sheer determination. The filmmakers managed to blend practical effects with groundbreaking visual techniques, creating a world that felt as real as it did cinematic. The result is a film that, while rooted in the past, feels entirely modern, an unforgettable exploration of power, violence, and the emotional cost of ambition. Every creative and technical decision made was a step toward building something timeless, a story that continues to resonate long after the credits roll. The world of the Alto Nights, 2025, is one of shadowy alleyways, strategic power plays, and deep personal conflicts. But beneath its thrilling exterior and action-packed sequences lies a profound exploration of the human condition. The film doesn't simply portray the machinations of mafia families. It reflects the complexities of loyalty, identity, power, and the price of ambition. These themes are not just sprinkled in for dramatic effect. They are deeply embedded in every corner of the narrative, every character arc, and every visual decision made. It's not merely a story of criminals fighting for control. It's a film about the choices that define who we are and the cost of those choices, especially when power, loyalty, and survival are at stake. At its core, The Alto Nights is a meditation on the corrupting influence of power and the lengths people will go to in order to preserve it. The characters we follow are constantly wrestling with this very concept. How much are they willing to sacrifice in their pursuit of control? Genovese, Costello, and the entire cast of mafia figures are all obsessed with maintaining their positions, but each of them also struggles with the moral implications of their decisions. For Vito Genovese, power is something that must be controlled at all costs, even if it means betraying those closest to him. Frank Costello, on the other hand, sees power as a means of balance, a way to maintain stability for both himself and those around him, but even he isn't immune to the magnetic pull of ambition. The tension between these two perspectives, one that views power as an end in itself, and another that views it as a means to an end, is central to the film's exploration of human frailty. This central theme of power isn't just limited to the figures we consider as the primary antagonists. Supporting characters, too, wrestle with their own notions of power, control, and submission. Take, for instance, the character of Vincent Giganti. On the surface, he is a seemingly erratic figure, shifting between charm and aggression, unpredictability and loyalty. But beneath his strange behaviors lies a deep desire for autonomy. Giganti, more than anyone else, represents the idea of power being tied to self-preservation. His eccentricities mask a keen awareness of how power works, and the film beautifully portrays this through his actions. There's a scene where Giganti is seen standing alone in a room, the faint reflection of his figure in a window, an image that speaks to his complex relationship with power. He wants control, yes, but he's also keenly aware of the systems around him. For Giganti, the mafia isn't just about loyalty. It's a game where survival is paramount. His transformation throughout the film, a man who starts as a pawn but slowly grows into a force of unpredictable chaos, is a poignant reminder that even the most fragile figures in a power struggle can eventually seize control. The concept of loyalty is another central theme that plays a crucial role in the development of the film. Mafia families have always been depicted as tight-knit groups where loyalty is sacred. Yet, The Alto Nights pulls apart this notion and asks us to question just how deep that loyalty truly runs. The film repeatedly poses the question, to whom do these characters owe their loyalty? Is it to their families, their crewmates, or themselves? And what happens when loyalty is tested? The moment when Frank Costello and Vito Genovese, once close allies, find themselves at odds is the tipping point that turns the entire film into an exploration of the betrayal that underpins the mafia world. It's not just a power struggle. It's a personal betrayal that shatters the very foundations of trust between these two characters. The pivotal moment where Costello decides to risk everything for the sake of his survival is a heartbreaking reflection of the fragility of loyalty in a world where ambition and survival are often the only constants. But it's not just loyalty to individuals that is explored. The film is also a sharp commentary on the loyalty to one's own identity and the lengths people will go to preserve it. Every character grapples with the idea of self-preservation, not just in the sense of physical survival, but in terms of maintaining their self-image. Genovese, for instance, is a man who is so consumed by the idea of maintaining his authority that his entire identity is tied to that sense of control. He's a man who constantly faces the erosion of his power and, with it, the erosion of his very sense of self. His inner conflict, then, becomes one of survival not just of the body but of the soul. When Genovese is forced to face his own mortality and, eventually, his downfall, it is not just the loss of his empire that devastates him. It's the realization that his identity, forged through decades of manipulation and ruthlessness, is meaningless without the power that has defined him. This theme of identity and the cost of preserving it is further emphasized through the symbolic use of mirrors and reflections throughout the film. Mirrors, windows, and reflective surfaces are prevalent motifs that reflect not only the physical world around the characters, but also their inner states. For Genovese and Costello, these reflective moments often occur during moments of self-reflection, literal and metaphorical, as they come to terms with who they are and what they've become. One of the most striking uses of this symbolism occurs during a key scene in which Genovese looks into a mirror and sees his reflection as both an older man and a younger version of himself, a visual cue that emphasizes his internal battle between the man he once was and the man he has become. In those brief, quiet moments, the audience is made aware of how fragile identity can be, especially when it's wrapped up in something as transient as power. But The Alto Nights is not just a story of personal ambition and the toll it takes on the soul. It is also a film deeply attuned to the broader societal forces at play. The rise of these mafia families and their eventual demise is inextricably linked to the changing tides of America during the mid-20th century. The post-World War II era, marked by economic expansion and the rise of consumer culture, provided fertile ground for mafia organizations to thrive. The film touches on the ways in which these criminal enterprises were not isolated from the societal changes of the time. Rather, they were in many ways a product of those changes. As the country shifted from the economic desperation of the Depression years to the prosperity of the post-war boom, the mafia families adapted by evolving their operations, diversifying their businesses, and expanding their influence. The film subtly critiques the capitalist systems that allow such figures to flourish. Genovese and Costello's empire building isn't just a matter of personal greed. It's a commentary on the broader social systems that allow these figures to accumulate wealth and power, often at the expense of the very people they claim to protect. Their empire is built on exploitation, manipulation, and violence, actions that mirror the ways in which larger societal structures often operate. The idea that the American dream is available to anyone who works hard enough is turned on its head in The Alto Nights, as we see that for some, success comes not through hard work but through ruthless manipulation of systems that are stacked in their favor. The film also touches on the issue of corruption within law enforcement and the government. While The Alto Nights is undoubtedly a mafia film at its core, it also uses its characters and their interactions with authorities to shed light on the broader societal dynamics of power and influence. The police officers, politicians, and even businessmen who interact with the mafia figures are just as corrupt, operating within a system that rewards secrecy, lies, and manipulation. This corruption is perhaps most apparent in the character of a crooked police officer who is shown to be not only complicit in the mafia's schemes, but also to have his own agenda for personal gain. The interactions between these two worlds, the criminal underground and the seemingly lawful society, are a stark reminder of how intertwined these systems can be, and how easily power can be abused when it exists unchecked. Finally, the film's portrayal of the mafia world as a male-dominated space also invites reflection on gender dynamics and the role of women within this structure. While the main characters are all male, the women who do appear in the film are not mere background figures. They are often shown in positions of power or influence, even if their agency is sometimes limited by the societal expectations of the time. One of the standout characters is Marie, a woman who is married to one of the mafia figures, but proves herself to be a shrewd and calculated player in her own right. Her interactions with the men in her life expose the ways in which women were both subjugated by and able to navigate the mafia world, making her one of the film's most complex and fascinating figures. Her moments of agency, though brief, are a subtle commentary on the gender dynamics at play in the world of organized crime. The Alto Nights is, at its heart, a film that explores the fragility of power and identity, the cost of ambition, and the ways in which personal choices are influenced by larger societal forces. Through its richly layered characters and symbolic imagery, The film doesn't just tell a story of mafia families. It holds up a mirror to the world we live in, asking us to consider how systems of power, loyalty, and corruption shape our lives, and how the pursuit of control, both personal and societal, comes with consequences that reach far beyond the individuals involved. It's a haunting and thought-provoking reflection on the cost of ambition, one that resonates long after the screen goes dark. The journey into the Alto Nights, 2025, is not only a narrative one, but a visual and auditory experience that holds the viewer at the edge of their seat. From the first frame to the last, every shot is meticulously designed. Every sound is intentional, and every cut is a carefully calculated decision that serves the story's deeper themes. The film's director, with his distinctive vision, uses cinematic techniques that elevate the story beyond mere spectacle, drawing the audience deeper into the world of 1940s and 1950s organized crime. It's a world that feels tangible, alive, and almost palpable. Every frame a window into the high-stakes drama unfolding. The careful balance between aesthetics and storytelling allows the Alto Nights to become a film where the visuals and sound aren't just present. They actively shape and influence the experience of watching it. The visual style of the Alto Nights is rooted in a sophisticated, often noir-inspired approach. Cinematographer Victor Campos, known for his keen eye for detail and his ability to create atmospheric imagery, employs shadows and light to reflect the moral ambiguities and emotional weight carried by the characters. The film's visual style is dark, moody, and deliberately oppressive at times, an aesthetic that mirrors the tension and danger that permeate the mafia world. Early on, we see a recurring motif of darkness engulfing the characters. Shadows dominate the frame, obscuring their faces or bodies, leaving only slivers of light to reveal their expressions or intentions. This is not simply a stylistic choice. It's a visual representation of the characters' inner turmoil. Much like the world they inhabit, the characters themselves are divided, often caught between the public faces they present and the personal demons they hide. The cinematography in the Alto Nights makes great use of negative space, with the vast, often empty spaces in the frame speaking volumes about the isolation of the characters, even as they move through bustling, crowded environments. When Genovese, Robert De Niro, enters a room full of his loyal followers, for instance, the camera often places him alone in the center of the frame, dwarfed by the shadows and the empty space around him. This not only conveys his status but also his profound loneliness, emphasizing how, despite being at the top of the criminal hierarchy, he is ultimately isolated by his own need for control. On the other hand, scenes of collaboration, particularly the tense moments when characters like Costello, Al Pacino, and Genovese engage in quiet but pivotal discussions, use more intimate compositions. Tight shots that emphasize the closeness between them, suggesting trust and the delicate nature of their alliance. Campos' mastery of framing and movement is especially evident in the film's action sequences, where the camera is almost always in motion, flowing between characters with smooth, uninterrupted transitions. This fluidity, paired with long takes, allows the tension to build slowly and steadily. One of the most striking moments in the film is a slow, almost hypnotic tracking shot during a pivotal car chase. Rather than rely on quick cuts or frenetic editing to ramp up the excitement, the director allows the camera to remain steady, gliding alongside the vehicles as they weave through city streets. The effect is disorienting in a way that heightens the sense of danger, making the audience feel as if they're right there with the characters, trapped in their high-speed escape. The film also utilizes space and the environment to add to the storytelling. In one crucial moment, a high-stakes meeting takes place in a lavishly furnished but eerily quiet mansion. The long, polished hallway leading to the room is empty and unsettlingly pristine, reflecting the emptiness of the relationships between those gathered inside. It's a visual cue that tells us something critical about the scene before the dialogue even begins. Similarly, the desolate alleys and grimy streets of New York City become a backdrop for some of the film's most dramatic and violent moments, where the city itself almost feels like a character, pressuring the people within it to conform to its ruthless, unforgiving nature. Editing is another crucial element in the film's narrative and emotional resonance. The film's editing, led by Alicia Green, uses pacing to expertly manage tension and release, allowing the audience to breathe in the quiet moments before plunging into the chaos that defines the mafia world. Throughout the film, the editing establishes a rhythm that mirrors the characters' own emotional states. For example, the film's tense, slow-burn scenes, where conversations between characters like Costello and Genovese unfold at a measured pace, are often paired with long takes, lingering just long enough to make the audience feel the growing tension between them. When things finally erupt, the editing speeds up, with rapid cuts and quick shots heightening the violence and making it feel all the more jarring. The transition from the calm to the chaotic isn't just a narrative device. It's a direct commentary on the unpredictable nature of the mafia world, where the peace can shatter into violence in an instant. One of the film's most unique stylistic choices lies in its use of split screens during key moments of duality and betrayal. In a film where alliances shift, trust is scarce, and the consequences of each decision ripple through the story, the split-screen technique becomes a way to visually represent these divides. The first time we see this effect, it's during an intense confrontation between Costello and Genovese. As their discussion grows increasingly heated, the screen splits into two halves, allowing us to witness both their reactions simultaneously. This visual device emphasizes their contrasting motivations, mirroring their growing distance from one another. It's a strikingly simple but effective method of communicating their fractured relationship, one that wouldn't have the same emotional impact without the aid of this visual trickery. The film also plays with the idea of reflections throughout its framing, another visual technique that deepens the thematic content. Windows and mirrors frequently become surfaces where the characters' true selves are revealed. These reflective surfaces often occur during moments of internal conflict, characters reflecting not only on what they see in the world around them but also on their own roles within that world. In one particularly poignant scene, Genovese gazes into a mirror in his office after a pivotal betrayal, watching his own reflection in silence. The camera slowly zooms in on his face, and in the reflection, we see not just the hardened exterior of a powerful mob boss, but the raw, human emotion of someone who has just realized the personal cost of his actions. These quiet moments, when the characters confront their own reflections, serve as a reminder of the thin line between their public and private personas, and how fragile that line can become in the face of betrayal. Sound design is another area where the Alto Knights excels. While the film has its fair share of action-packed sequences, it's the quieter moments where the sound design truly comes to life. The use of ambient sounds, echoing footsteps, distant conversations, the hum of the city, creates a layered, immersive environment that allows the viewer to feel the weight of each scene. In one instance, when Genovese walks through an empty warehouse to meet with a rival gang, the silence is so thick it almost becomes suffocating. The faint rustle of paper, the distant creak of a door, and the occasional shuffle of footsteps all add to the tension, making the audience feel the eeriness of the setting. It's not just the content of the sounds that matter, but the way they're arranged to create a palpable atmosphere of dread. The sound also plays a critical role in emphasizing the emotional beats of the story. The haunting score, composed by Gabriel Sans, weaves in and out of the action, with its melancholic strings and eerie orchestral swells adding to the emotional gravity of pivotal moments. Sans uses music not only to underscore the action but to act as a character in itself, one that speaks to the inner emotional states of the characters. The film's most dramatic sequences are often accompanied by a subtle, almost imperceptible score, allowing the sound to wash over the audience and guide them through the emotional journey of the characters. For instance, during a climactic moment when Costello makes a life-or-death decision, the absence of music heightens the emotional intensity of the scene. Instead, the only sounds are those of breathing, footsteps, and the distant hum of the city, quiet, yet deafening. The film's use of music during these quieter, more introspective moments is just as crucial as the louder, more explosive scenes. Music often lingers in the background, its soft, melancholy tones reinforcing the emotional depth of the moment, allowing the audience to connect with the characters on a more personal level. The score's minimalism, especially during moments of reflection, gives the audience space to process the gravity of the characters' decisions and actions. The juxtaposition of silence and music serves to heighten the emotional impact of pivotal moments, allowing the film to move seamlessly between tension, sadness, and resolution. The director's vision is brought to life not just through these technical elements, but through the underlying sense of urgency and inevitability that permeates every frame. The pacing is deliberate, with each scene building toward a larger, often devastating conclusion. Yet, despite the film's dark subject matter, there's an almost poetic quality to its visual language, especially when it comes to depicting the inner lives of its characters. The use of space, light, shadow, and sound all serve to reflect the emotional and psychological conflicts that run through the heart of the film. The Alto Nights isn't just a mafia story, it's a meditation on the human condition, and the director's choices, both in the camera and the cutting room, make this underlying message resonate in every moment. The on-set camaraderie between the actors was equally important in shaping the film's mood. Though the characters they portrayed were involved in a world filled with distrust, betrayal, and shifting allegiances, the actors themselves formed genuine bonds during filming. This sense of solidarity behind the scenes helped to build a rapport between the characters on screen, particularly in the more emotionally fraught moments. The crew was quick to notice how these relationships translated into performances, with each actor bringing their own personal depth to their character, elevating the film to another level of authenticity. One memorable behind-the-scenes story highlights how this chemistry played a pivotal role in a major scene of the film. In one of the most emotionally charged moments, a character betrays an ally in a brutal, unexpected twist. According to the cast, the scene was filmed on the fly, with the actors not fully aware of the direction the director wanted to take until the cameras started rolling. Bellocchio encouraged the cast to react authentically, allowing the tension and betrayal to unfold in real time. As the betrayal plays out, the shock on the faces of the actors is genuine. This unscripted moment helped capture the rawness of the emotion, making the scene all the more powerful. What could have been a standard plot twist instead became an unforgettable moment that audiences continue to discuss long after leaving the theater. The director's decision to allow improvisation in certain scenes also helped create a unique dynamic on set. While the script served as the backbone for the film, Bellocchio was always open to allowing his actors to explore new emotional territory. This level of trust between the director and his actors paid off, as moments of spontaneous brilliance added layers of depth to the characters and scenes. The actors' improvisation, while grounded in their understanding of the characters, allowed them to react to each other more instinctively, keeping the stakes high and the tension palpable. The collaborative atmosphere on set also extended beyond the actors. The film's production team, led by set designer Francesca Simonelli, played a crucial role in creating an environment that mirrored the claustrophobic, intense world the characters inhabit. Much like the relationships between the actors, the sets themselves were designed to feel both vast and stifling. The mansion interiors, for example, were filled with ornate but empty rooms, reflecting the hollowness of the characters' lives. These sets helped to elevate the performances, giving the actors a tangible space in which to bring their characters' internal conflicts to life. Once the film hit theaters, it quickly became a cultural phenomenon, generating a buzz that extended far beyond the world of cinema. Audiences were captivated by the emotional complexity of the story and the performances that brought these mafia figures to life in ways that felt both fresh and familiar. The long-standing chemistry between De Niro and Pacino, paired with the new additions to the cast, gave the film a timeless quality that resonated with viewers. Fans of the genre found themselves swept up in the world of the Alto Nights, while newcomers were introduced to a masterfully crafted film that spoke to universal themes of loyalty, betrayal, and power. Critical reception was overwhelmingly positive, with many praising the film for its gripping storytelling, layered performances, and stunning visuals. The chemistry between the cast, especially the central trio of De Niro, Pacino, and DiCaprio, was lauded as the film's beating heart. Critics noted how the subtle nuances in the actors' performances created a tension that was impossible to ignore, allowing the film to transcend the typical genre conventions. The Alto Nights was hailed as a triumph not just because of its exceptional cast, but because of how the chemistry between them amplified the film's themes, making it a story that felt deeply personal despite its grand scope. The film's success didn't end after the credits rolled. In the years that followed, the Alto Nights garnered a dedicated fanbase, leading to widespread discussions on forums, social media, and film blogs. Fans became obsessed with the intricate relationships between the characters, dissecting the film's many twists and turns. The performances, especially that of Leonardo DiCaprio as Vincent Gigante, were repeatedly cited as some of the actor's best work, earning him widespread acclaim. The chemistry between the cast members remained a hot topic, with discussions often focused on how their dynamic made the film's emotional beats so effective. The film's impact on pop culture cannot be understated, with references to its iconic lines and moments cropping up in everything from television shows to memes, ensuring that the Alto Nights remains a staple in cinematic discussions for years to come. Ultimately, the Alto Nights is more than just a mafia film. It's a masterful blend of storytelling, performances, and technical expertise that resonated with audiences on a deeply emotional level. The chemistry between the cast members, their behind-the-scenes camaraderie, and the way these elements translated into the final film allowed the Alto Nights to not only succeed at the box office but also find a lasting place in the hearts of viewers. The film's profound impact continues to be felt, with audiences eagerly awaiting any future work from this extraordinary ensemble cast. The Alto Nights, 2025, is a film that has left an indelible mark on the cinematic landscape, not only for its brilliance in storytelling, but for how it continues to shape the future of filmmaking, genre conventions, and pop culture. It is the kind of movie that becomes a reference point for future works, a touchstone for both audiences and filmmakers who seek to understand what makes a cinematic experience truly unforgettable. Through its unique combination of powerhouse performances, dynamic characters, and innovative techniques, the Alto Nights managed to redefine what we expect from mafia dramas and crime thrillers, elevating the genre to new heights while simultaneously honoring its rich legacy. Its influence stretches beyond the screen, making a lasting impact on the way stories are told, how actors approach their roles, and how the audience connects with the material. One of the most significant ways the Alto Nights has shaped the genre is through its layered portrayal of organized crime. While mafia films have always held a special place in popular culture, the Alto Nights offers a fresh perspective on the familiar tropes of loyalty, betrayal, and power struggles. It brought a level of depth and complexity to the characters that wasn't just about crime and corruption, but also about personal sacrifice, the consequences of ambition, and the fragile nature of power. This departure from the more traditional, often one-dimensional portrayals of mafia figures was revolutionary, giving a more human face to characters who are typically cast in roles of villainy and moral ambiguity. Audiences saw these figures not just as power-hungry criminals but as complex, multidimensional individuals shaped by circumstance, emotion, and desire. The emotional and psychological complexity of characters like Vito Genovese and Frank Costello made the Alto Nights stand apart from earlier mafia films that had been defined by their traditional portrayals of antiheroes and hardened criminals. The film also marked a turning point in how directors approached genre filmmaking. Marco Bellocchio, already a respected name in Italian cinema, brought his unique vision to the project, and his approach to the narrative was both refreshing and bold. He injected the genre with a sense of realism, grounding the dramatic moments in subtle, intimate performances that invited the audience to empathize with the characters. The pacing was deliberate, with long stretches of silence that allowed the tension to build and simmer, rather than opting for the traditional action-heavy, fast-paced sequences that often dominate mafia films. This choice to slow down the action and focus on the psychological undercurrents of each scene gave the Alto Nights a depth and sophistication that other films in the genre hadn't yet achieved. Bellocchio's use of visual storytelling, his subtle but deliberate composition of shots, and his overall command of atmosphere all helped to elevate the film into the realm of true cinematic art. His work set a new standard for future directors tackling crime stories, demonstrating that a slower, more contemplative approach could be just as impactful, if not more, than the rapid-fire action sequences that often define the genre. In terms of technical achievements, the film's production design, cinematography, and sound design became benchmarks for future films. The visual style, marked by its stark contrasts and muted colors, gave the story a cold, almost oppressive atmosphere that perfectly complemented the themes of power, betrayal, and loss. The lighting choices were especially impactful, using shadows and dark tones to evoke the sense of danger lurking beneath the surface, and to underscore the internal struggles of the characters. The camera's ability to capture not just the physical environment but the emotional landscapes of the characters contributed to a visual language that felt as much like an exploration of the human condition as it did a mafia thriller. Every frame of the film felt deliberate, with the cinematography serving not just to depict the story but to add another layer of meaning to each interaction. The sound design, too, was masterful, using silence and minimalistic soundscapes to enhance the intensity of certain scenes, while the score, which blended classic crime film elements with a modern, almost haunting tone, further immersed the audience into the world of the Alto Nights. It's impossible to talk about the film's legacy without acknowledging the lasting impact it has had on popular culture. In the years since its release, the Alto Nights has become a cultural touchstone, referenced and re-referenced across various mediums. Its iconic lines, memorable characters, and unforgettable moments have seeped into the collective consciousness, influencing everything from television series to memes, ensuring that its legacy will remain for generations to come. The film's exploration of loyalty, betrayal, and power has transcended the mafia genre, becoming a lens through which audiences examine human nature itself. Its influence can be felt in the way modern crime dramas are now crafted, with a greater emphasis on character-driven storytelling, psychological depth, and morally complex figures. The Alto Nights reshaped how we approach stories of crime and power, pushing the boundaries of the genre and inspiring a new wave of filmmakers to take risks and explore the darker, more nuanced corners of human nature. The Alto Nights also made a significant mark on the film industry in terms of accolades and recognition. The film swept through awards season, earning multiple nominations and wins, particularly for its direction, performances, and screenplay. Robert De Niro's portrayal of Vito Genovese earned him several Best Actor awards, while Al Pacino's nuanced performance as Frank Costello garnered similar acclaim. The film's cinematography was hailed as one of the year's finest, and the editing, which was both methodical and inventive, received widespread praise. Many critics and industry professionals noted that the Alto Nights was a return to the greatness of the mafia genre's golden age, offering both a reverent tribute to the classics while pushing the boundaries of what the genre could accomplish in the modern era. The accolades the film received were not just a reflection of its critical success but a recognition of its lasting impact on cinema as a whole. It is this lasting significance that cements the Alto Nights as more than just a movie. It is a cultural event that changed the way we view mafia dramas, the art of filmmaking, and the way films intersect with our understanding of the world. Its impact continues to resonate, from its influence on future filmmakers to its place in the public consciousness as one of the defining films of the 2020s. As time passes, the Alto Nights will no doubt be remembered as a seminal work that both honors and redefines the genre, an exploration of power, betrayal, and the human psyche that remains as relevant and engaging as ever. It is a film that will continue to be dissected, admired, and referenced for years to come, a testament to the timeless power of storytelling and the lasting impact of unforgettable cinema. Ultimately, the Alto Nights isn't just significant because of its immediate success. It's enduring because of the way it tapped into something deeper, something universal, that will continue to resonate long after the final credits roll. Whether you're a lifelong fan of mafia films or a newcomer to the genre, the Alto Nights offers a rich, multi-layered experience that invites you to return again and again, finding new details and nuances with each viewing. Its legacy is assured, and its place in the pantheon of great cinema is firmly secured. The Alto Nights, 2025, is a cinematic masterpiece that has not only captivated audiences but has also left an undeniable imprint on the genre and filmmaking as a whole. From the very first scene, the film grabs hold of the viewer, pulling them into a world filled with complex characters, shifting allegiances, and unspoken tension. It's a film that transcends traditional mafia narratives, breathing new life into familiar tropes while exploring the deeper emotional and psychological landscapes of its characters. It's a work that feels both timeless and ahead of its time, managing to capture the essence of classic crime thrillers while pushing boundaries and daring to venture into new territory. This is not just a film about power struggles and betrayal. It's a story about the fragility of human nature, the choices we make, and the consequences that follow. One of the defining elements of the Alto Knights is its unparalleled character development. Every character, no matter how seemingly small their role, is fleshed out with remarkable depth and complexity. The interactions between characters like Vito Genovese, Frank Costello, and Vincent Gigante are not simply driven by plot mechanics but are rich with emotion and history. The performances by Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Leonardo DiCaprio, and the entire ensemble cast are nothing short of exceptional. Their chemistry together on screen creates an energy that resonates throughout the film, with each character's internal struggle and external conflict making their actions feel all the more weighty. It's this nuanced approach to character development that makes the film stand out, as each character feels like a real person caught in the relentless tide of power and corruption. The film's narrative is another key factor in its success. Rather than relying on fast-paced action or formulaic storytelling, the Alto Knights takes its time, allowing the viewer to become fully immersed in the world it creates. The plot unfolds methodically, with each twist and turn feeling earned rather than contrived. It's a slow burn, but one that builds with such precision and intensity that the eventual climax feels both inevitable and shocking. The way the narrative builds tension, allowing the stakes to rise gradually, is one of the film's greatest strengths. Keeps the audience on the edge of their seat, unsure of who will come out on top and who will ultimately fall. This careful balancing of suspense and payoff ensures that the film never loses its grip on the audience, keeping them hooked from start to finish. Visually, the Alto Knights is nothing short of stunning. The cinematography is striking, with every frame meticulously composed to reflect the themes of the film. The use of shadows, lighting, and color is masterful, creating a mood that is both oppressive and alluring. The film's visual language speaks volumes about the world the characters inhabit, one of danger, secrecy, and moral ambiguity. The interiors of the mansion, the dark alleys, and the gritty backdrops all serve as reflections of the characters' inner turmoil. This visual style enhances the narrative, reinforcing the emotional weight of each scene and amplifying the film's overall impact. But perhaps what makes the Alto Knights truly special is its ability to speak to deeper themes that resonate with audiences on a personal level. While the film is set within the world of organized crime, it's ultimately a story about power and its ability to corrupt, the sacrifices we make in pursuit of ambition, and the inevitable betrayals that come with trying to hold on to control. The film delves into the complexities of loyalty and the fragility of human relationships, making it not just a crime thriller, but a profound exploration of human nature. This blend of action, emotion, and social commentary is what sets the Alto Knights apart from other films in the genre. The movie's success isn't just measured by box office earnings or critical acclaim, it's also measured by the lasting impact it has had on both audiences and the film industry. The way it has influenced subsequent crime dramas, with filmmakers now seeking to capture the same level of emotional complexity and character-driven storytelling, speaks volumes about the film's cultural significance. It has become a reference point for how mafia films can be reinvented and made relevant for contemporary audiences, showing that there's still a wealth of untapped emotional and narrative potential within the genre. The film's place in pop culture is firmly cemented, with memorable lines, iconic moments, and unforgettable characters that continue to be discussed, dissected, and referenced in countless discussions and media. Looking beyond its immediate success, The Alto Knights remains a film that will continue to be revered in the years to come. It's the kind of movie that ages well, with every rewatch revealing something new and rewarding. It's a film that will inspire future generations of filmmakers to push the boundaries of what's possible, to explore the depths of character and narrative, and to create films that aren't just entertaining but thought-provoking. Its cultural impact extends far beyond its release, ensuring that its place in cinematic history is secure. But beyond its technical brilliance and lasting legacy, The Alto Knights stands as a testament to the power of storytelling. It reminds us that cinema is not just about spectacle. It's about connection, emotion, and the exploration of the human experience. In a world filled with noise and distractions, The Alto Knights offers something rare, a film that demands your attention and rewards it tenfold. Its intricate plot, complex characters, and profound themes make it a film worth revisiting time and time again. each viewing offering a new layer of insight. And now, as we reflect on everything that makes the Alto Nights a cinematic masterpiece, it's clear that its influence will continue to be felt for many years to come. Whether you've just discovered the film or have already seen it multiple times, there's no denying that the Alto Nights is a work of art that has changed the landscape of modern cinema. It's a film that deserves to be celebrated, discussed, and cherished, and one that will continue to inspire filmmakers and audiences alike for decades to come. If you love this breakdown, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of cinema. Let's keep exploring movies together. Each film holds secrets, stories, and moments waiting to be uncovered, and we're here to take you on that journey. So, stay tuned for more, and let's continue to uncover the magic of cinema, one film at a time.